Hello, loony listeners. You're listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. I'm Mrs. Sissy, host the second.
And I'm your other host, Stephen Grant, multi-millionaire, but not quite billionaire. And this week, we learn more about what to expect from Bemis' new run, some more new figures to keep an eye on, and we continue with our review of issue 4 of Lemire's most recent run, and throw back to a certain Sheepface's appearance in Iron Man, issue 161. So grab out your issues, sit back, relax, and get your Khonshu on.
Okay, loony listeners, we are at episode 4 of Into the Night. Thanks for joining us again. Yes, it's great to be back, and we again have a lot to discuss tonight. Connor, how do you see the last week unfurl?
Yeah, I mean, I really thought we got like the big interview for CBR, and then that'd kind of be it. But we got a one figure announcement, possibly two. We got more information on the run. We got more solicitations. It's going nuts. We're blessed.
Yeah. It's a great follow-up to the big news last week. So without any further ado, let's get into it. The first article that we saw was the Max Bemis article. It was an interview on the Marvel website. And this was quite an in-depth interview.
Like this sort of... And it's also all new information, you read the previous one, now you jump onto this, and it's like a whole new series of stuff coming out, and maybe stuff that Marvel's only letting him tell now on their own side. Yeah,
I really liked how they really kind of questioned, although, he's probably withholding a lot of information, as you do at Marvel, but I really like how he delved into how he's going to tackle Moon Knight's multiple identities, and also the big bad, which we all kind of know now as Horus, or the Sun God. First thing off from the interview, I mean, they've released that issue number 188 will be released on the 8th of November, and issue 189 will be followed on the 29th of November.
Twice monthly. Woo.
Yeah. So I hope, Connor, you picked it like a dirty nose. But look, even if it's just this first month of November and then it goes into monthly, that's fine as well. I'm not sure. Actually, in hindsight, I wouldn't really prefer a bi-monthly as a regular thing, because just because I think it impacts on the artist's quality.
We most likely wouldn't get a consistent artist with a twice monthly, and I hope it's what we get, just Bemis and Burrows.
And Burrows, because then you start getting fill-ins, and some of them are okay, but sometimes they're kind of it's really obvious that they're rushed. So I'm hoping at least these two first issues will be quality stuff, and if we go into monthlies after that, then that's totally fine. Connor, what would you say kind of stuck out for you in the interview?
I think the part he talks a lot about, there's themes of mental illness I'll get to in a sec, but I think the first one is when he sort of talks about Mark Spector as a person, how he sort of fights dirty, but he's still trying to be a good guy, and sort of that duality of a sort of a very violent hero and a man just trying to make himself better.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. It's kind of obvious, but you don't really realize it until, I guess, Bemis says it out loud in the interview, and it's totally true. Like, Mark Spector is a really violent and quite brutal person, but juxtaposed to that, he's really trying to do something good. So it's I don't know, you can kind of make similarities with the Punisher, but the Punisher to me he's kind of totally crossed the line.
Yeah. Moon Knight's reined himself in while Punisher was just let out and never just crossed the line.
And I like from the interview as well, so Bemis talks about chaos and order, and how that's reflected basically not only within Moon Knight himself, but with his new big bad enemy, which will be, he's called the Truth, right?
Yeah, the truth is we got now solicitations as well, with an interesting point in that being that he makes his victims commit suicide. It doesn't look like he may not even actually have a hand in fighting, and just seems to be sort of a mental affliction that causes them to take their own life, which is an interesting spin.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more chilling, I think. You know, if you're a bad guy and you get someone to just kill themselves, certainly in the mental realm, and that kind of fits with Moon Knight anyway. I mean, the whole thing with Moon Knight is his mental illness, so you've got this big bad that can mentally affect his or her victims, so it seems quite apt that they're kind of they'll be going up head to head. The other thing I thought was really cool in the interview was the talk about Bemis was talking about the subplot. So obviously the main plot will be battling, you know, this big bad and you know, battling a lot of enemies. The subplot would be the emotional aspects, I think, of each of the identities. And what I found really interesting and really good was that he's not going to shy away from the personalities, you know. So Lemire concentrated so much on the identities of Moon Knight, and we talked about, yeah, maybe we'll get a supernatural element, but it's good to see that Bemis sticks with the identity aspect of Moon Knight, and basically who's in control of who out of his personalities, which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah, I love that carry on from Lemire's run there, where sort of as we got through the run, and you'll see as we go through it that by the end, you know, there's almost this sort of conversation like it's Mark's head's a house and everyone's sort of a housemate inside of it, and they seem to like pass the baton and actually have conversations that look like it could be really interesting to see in the real world, back where he's fighting villains in New York.
Yeah, and you have Stephen Grant, who's meant to be this upstanding, you know, quite clean-cut personality of Mark, which we all know. And Bemis talks about Jake Lockley. Actually, interestingly, he talks about Jake Lockley being as close to like the dark side or the evil part of Mark, which I found. I mean, you and I both like Jake Lockley. I never really saw him as evil. I mean, he's a street level guy, right? He's kind of he's got his ear close to the ground, but I would never call him evil. So it'll be interesting to see how Bemis kind of weaves that into Jake Lockley.
Yeah, he calls him a borderline bad person. Well, not bad because Mark isn't evil, but he's as close to bad as Mark can get.
Yeah, so I mean, I would have thought Mark Spector kind of fits that bill. He's a mercenary, and you know he's killed people, so I would have thought Mark would have been veering more towards the bad side, and he worked with the Bushmen as well. So it's quite an interesting take from Bemis. Not saying it's good or bad, but yeah, let's see how that unfolds. Also, as well, Bemis mentions basically it's dark, and with Jason Burrows' art and his history, I can't see it being anything but dark.
Yeah.
You've seen some of the artwork, yeah, from Jason Burrows?
Yeah, very intense. I could never get into Cross, and that's where I sort of know him best from seeing screenshots of that over the years.
Yeah, well, I think we had a brief discussion with Adam, I think, on the Into the Night group, yeah, and he seemed mortified by what he saw. He Googled it. Yeah, no, I was kind of like hesitant to, but I did myself, and I Googled it, and yeah, it's definitely quite heavy. So we're going to get a really dark, I think. I mean, it's not going to be that bad. Marvel will censor it, I'm sure, but it's going to be quite dark. And again, I like how I like how Max Bemis mentions if you kind of want to, something along the lines, if you want to read the comic at night, or if you want to, you know, immerse yourself in the nighttime, this is the comic to do it. So it sounds quite ominous and it's quite sinister.
And he sort of puts some worries to rest when people are kind of worried about a comedy writer with I like this line here where it's weird and sometimes funny, but it's super dark, and that's just like a line that encapsulates the run for Bemis himself.
Definitely, it's reminiscent of what we've heard before about the likes of David Lynch's films, or Fargo, where it can be quite funny, but it is ultra dark. It's total black comedy. So, just looking forward to that with at least Bemis's first arc. He seems quite excited by the first arc, and he's saying, I think he ends the article saying, people who don't know Moon Knight, this is a good jumping on point, and those that are fans, things are going to change. So that might scare a few fans, but I'm quite excited at the prospect.
Yeah, and just another mention on sort of the whole role of mental health. I like that he sort of talks about his mental health being 50-50 between anarchy and morality, and then, that sometimes he seems in control, but yet there's still always that sort of glimpse of the anarchy inside his head. So that was a really interesting tidbit.
Yeah, so as a reader, you'll never, obviously we all side with Moon Knight, but you're never too 100% comfortable with with what he'll do or his actions, because you don't know whether he'll just flip. A really good article. Just a couple of other things. Bemis also makes mention in the article that the arc, or the first issue at least, will be kind of structured like a Marvel movie, which I'm excited about, because if it's got that kind of pacing, it's going to be hard to translate that onto page. But if we're talking about cinematic, action-packed,
explosive, ending.
Yeah, then definitely all for that. I mean, we talked about that before, about how the great runs like Houston's and even Munch's runs were quite cinematic sometimes, and that's definitely a good thing. Finally, another just a couple of other points. There was a question in the article as well about team-ups, and we've discussed before, Connor, about how at least Munch thinks Moon Knight should be teaming up, or shouldn't be teaming up, with the Marvel Universe. But it was no surprises to hear that Bemis said, the likes of Daredevil and Punisher will be great to kind of mix it with them, because they've got their own kind of insular world within their own series. I can definitely see that, but he didn't give anything away as to who will guest star. Do you have any ideas who may guest star? Or who you want to see guest star?
Ooh. I mean, I'm kind of feeling Punisher, but I feel it may be more likely for Moon Knight to show up in Punisher's book than the other way around.
Yeah, and they're old partners, aren't they? They cameo with each other, every so often.
I'd love for Fool Killer to make an appearance as a throwback to his run.
That was exact. I was kind of I was dangling the carrot there for you, Connor, and I'm glad to see that you got it. I think so as well. I'd love to see Fool Killer there, especially after. Did you read the rest of Fool Killer?
No, I haven't finished it just yet.
Okay, yeah, because I've read 1 to 4 now, because I think issue 5's not available on Marvel Unlimited. But the first 4 issues, yeah, it's great, and I'd love to see Fool Killer. I mean, I don't know how Fool Killer ends, because I haven't read the last issue, but if he's still kicking around, I'd love to see him kind of at least drop by and say hello to Moon Knight, because they're both a bit crazy, aren't they?
Yeah, and I suppose while we're talking about the therapist, Tommy from the Facebook group had an interesting point about Khonshu here.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I wonder if Khonshu is going to serve as a therapist in this run. He's been the absent god, the tormentor, and the enemy over the last 10 to 12 years. Recognizing that he may be battling Horus, Ra / Sun God, or whoever too, what might his purpose be with this large and unique role Bemis is giving him?
Yeah, that's a really thoughtful question, I think. And yeah, one definitely. What are your thoughts on that, Connor?
I love that. I think Khonshu had such an interesting role in the last run, and I wasn't even expecting him to possibly show up in this run, so it's really interesting to see him again, and I definitely feel after sort of the bombshell Lemire run that their relationship will be entirely different. I don't think Mark's going to be anywhere near as dependent, so I think, possibly having that kind of therapist example of possibly being stepped back or an ally more than sort of the puppeteer while Mark's on the strings that we've seen in previous runs.
Yeah, I think the way I see it as well, and it was a great point speculation by Tommy. I think like not only Lemire's run, but even if you cast your mind back to previous runs as well, and how Khonshu is depicted there, he's literally like the little devil on the shoulder, right? I'm just getting flashbacks of Horitz's run in Vengeance of the Moon Knight.
Oh yeah.
You have little Khonshu on the shoulder, just kind of either egging him on or heckling him. And now, it seems with Bemis's, the tables have turned. Khonshu is no longer in a position kind of power, which we've seen in the Lemire run. He's now he's up against something that is a big threat to him, which is Horus, the sun god. So I reckon it'll be interesting to see Khonshu in a in a vulnerable position now. And it'll be and how Moon Knight or Mark and Khonshu work together potentially, or I don't know. I don't know how Bemis will handle it, but it'll be good to see if Khonshu in a different light, and actually to have us rooting for him for once. That'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, so that sort of covers that. I brought up the solicitations before, so I won't actually go over that in discussion. But yes, November 8th, the first issue drops 188, and then November 29th, 189. So a bit of a way to go, but nonetheless, crazy close too.
Yeah, we're almost in September, so it's not too much longer, but yeah, still a bit of a wait. But having said that, that kind of segues nicely into our next bit of news. This came in kind of late, and it was Connor. It was you and I, or did you see it beforehand? Rebecca kind of pointed this out to us.
Yeah, she's over in London Super Comic Con where she heard this news.
Yeah, right. So she was actually there. Well, she was like listening to the panel, right?
I think so. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's first-hand account. But the article came out later on Bleeding Cool, and basically it has Bendis announcing that Moon Knight will appear in the Defenders comic. So, we have Moon Knight, a little bit still in Deadpool versus kills the rest of the Marvel Universe again, and it looks like he'll be popping up in the Defenders, which I think you called again as well, previous episode.
Yeah, he had talked about it on I think it was his own Tumblr or Instagram or some social media account. When he was talking about people showing up, and he's like, "Yep, Deadpool's going to be there, Moon Knight's going to be there," and what the news we got is in the next arc. He wasn't very specific when he said next arc, which in solicitations, the next arc is called Kingpins of New York, that starts with Deadpool in the first issue of that arc. So I think it is Kingpins of New York that Moon Knight will be appearing in. And to quote Rebecca, who quoted Bendis, that MK is going to be big time in the comics. So I think it's fair to say it's one to be tracking on the show.
Oh, definitely. We'll definitely be covering that news for you loonies. And also, just a little heads up then, I guess, to be sure to, if you're not collecting it already, to maybe drop by and pick up the Defenders issues coming up that might feature Moon Knight. That sounds really cool. He'll be coming up, might be coming up against the Kingpin. How cool is that? Moon Knight versus the Kingpin.
I wonder if the last time was that Purple Man issue we read couple of weeks back.
Oh yes, yeah. Oh gosh, that kind of flew by. But yeah, you're right. That was the last time he kind of tangled with him indirectly. He never kind of met him face to face. But look, Kingpin's one of my favourite villains as well, and it's only just augmented from Vincent D'Onofrio's performance on the Netflix show. So this will be very interesting to see unfold.
Yeah, I can't wait. It was such big news I wasn't expecting. So yeah, I'm all in.
All in. Right. Well, moving right along as well, we've got some in another different kind of facet of Moon Knight fandom. We got an announcement from Diamond Select Toys.
Yeah.
That. How cool is this? In 2018, I think it's in March 2018, they'll be releasing a 12-inch resin statue of Moon Knight, and it will be limited to 3,000 only, and you'll be given a certificate of authenticity in a full-color window box. and sculpted by none other than Jean Saint John. Do you know Jean Saint John, Connor?
No, I totally just thought they said Jean Paul, but
well, I don't know if he or she is any good, but he or she sounds they're right on top of their game. So you and I have discussed this, Connor, as well. And look, I've never actually purchased any statues or actually toy figures of comic book characters, but this is certainly one that I am going to be saving up for.
Yeah, and it's pretty decently priced too. So it's 150 US, which
it's I put down in our notes here 200 Aussie, but it's probably a bit more than that.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's you can order it now, so I think you have to be pretty quick. We'll post the articles up on our show notes, but have a look. It's a really beautiful statue, and one that I have definitely got my eye on. So that's pretty cool. Also, as well, just a bit of back history, and in the article. Apparently, Bowen Designs had released toy or statues before, and this Moon Knight statue is the first in, I think, over a decade where they've actually released a statue of Moon Knight. So it's been a long time between drinks, but...
yeah, I think I've even seen some people with that very old Moon Knight statue. Crazy.
I'm sure some of the loonies have posted it up on the group. There are a couple of really avid statue and figure collectors on the group, which is great to see. And I reckon those are the Bowen design statues that they talk about. There's also Diamond Select releasing. There's a fair few. They're releasing a Homecoming Spider-Man statue, which looks pretty cool, based on Tom Holland. There's also a couple of coming soons as well, which is interesting. They've got a Black Panther movie action figure.
Ooh.
Did you see that in the article? It looks pretty cool. It's not a statue. It retails for like $25 American, so I'm assuming it's kind of just like an action figure. But that looks pretty exciting. And there's also Marvel Minimates Black Panther movie box sets, which they haven't released the figures, thank God, because I'm not too keen on the toys kind of spoiling stuff. From the movie.
Lego does that a lot. Leaks Lego sets.
Yeah, it's not really good. So I try to steer clear of that, but hopefully they can keep things under wrap. And also, Connor, then the final bit of news.
Yeah, on more affordable figures. We have no idea about validation of this source, and it was only one site who reported it, I think, called Hot Toy News. But it looks like there may be a prototype Mr. Knight pop figure running around for your little office desks. So that's if that comes, I'll be on that. Like, they're pretty cute.
They're pretty cute. It's pretty simple because he's all white. It's hard to tell. Yeah, I don't know whether this was someone who kind of custom made it and has kind of put it up as a rumor, or whether it is indeed true. But hey, look, we're here to report the news, and we can only report what has been kind of released, but take it with a grain of salt. And whether or not they do release a Moon Knight Funko Pop, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, so that was a fair shot of news this week. Actually, we've been really lucky. Loving it.
Yeah, great.
Loving every second.
Yeah.
Tell you what.
Yeah, exactly. I'm scouring the internet every couple of days, hoping to pick up something new. But we've been pretty fortunate, haven't we? Alrighty. So before we get into it, let's just have a little listen to this. Okay, that was our little intro for the reviews. As always, we will be reviewing 2 comic books this podcast episode. We'll be continuing on with Jeff Lemire's, and we'll do an Invincible Iron Man one. So just for new listeners, so the way that we're going to structure our reviews, we'll basically have the bare bones, which is kind of like a pitch or a summary of the actual story. Connor and I will then announce our 4 aspects. which will be just like main points that we found interesting in the stories. And then finally, we will give it a rating out of Crescent Darts. So, the first one that we have is Moon Knight Volume 8, Greg Lemire's issue number 4. And this is titled Welcome to New Egypt. It's part 4 of 5. So it's just a continuation of what we've been reviewing the last few episodes. Released the 6th of July, 2016, and has the supergroup of Jeff Lemire writing, Greg Smallwood on pencils, and Jordi Belair on colours. So, the bare bones of this issue is... As Mark, Gina, Frenchie and Marlene find themselves just outside of the asylum, which had held them against their will, the group are confronted with another one of Amut's henchmen, Sobek. Although Gina is mortified by Mark hitting what looks to be a New York cop, Mark continues to attack Sobek, and in the fray, Frenchie is fatally wounded. Mark subdues Sobek, but it isn't long before Frenchie dies. Gina spots her diner through the sandstorm, and so the remaining three head there for some respite. Mark is further plagued by Khonshu's taunts. Then both Mark and Gina are shocked at the sight of Marlene conscious and standing. Gina makes a decision to remain at the diner to wait for her two boys, Rick and Ray, whilst Mark and Marlene are drawn to investigate the Great Pyramid currently sitting in the middle of New York City. Marlene confides in Mark that she retains all her memories of them together in their past life, and the issue ends with yet another twist as Mark is hit by a crescent dart, revealing the classic Moon Knight, guarding the entrance to the pyramid and ready for battle.
Damn.
So yeah, another pretty cool and mind-warping issue there. Just overall, Connor, first, did you like it? Did you like the issue?
Yeah, I think this has probably been my least favorite so far. Not like because it's bad. It's just kind of like getting from A to B sort of issue for the big climactic setup. And you need those issues, but I don't think it's like was as exciting as issue 1. But it definitely set up a very exciting issue 5.
Yeah, it definitely travels. Going on from last issue, I think, which I was in the same spot where you are now, Connor. I thought last issue was kind of going through the paces. And yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I think this issue is similar in tone, but it has a great reveal at the end, and it also has quite an impact with, I think, Frenchie dying.
Yeah, it's got really good touching moments.
Yeah, and even the nice. Anyway, let's get into the aspects. Connor, so what's your first aspect?
First aspect, only 3 pages in, as Frenchie, an unconscious Marlene, Gina, and Mr. Knight enter a sandy, apocalyptic New York. In the 3rd page, when Mr. Knight is confronting a police officer who looks still like a police officer, not the crocodile boy he turns out to be. There's this incredible page where Moon Knight sort of begins to doubt his visions as the sand in the air turns to water and it begins to rain. It's just this absolutely beautiful setup by Smallwood and Belair, and it's just wonderful the way the light glints off the water with the black background as it rains down, and the gorgeous water with the lights against it. It's just hit me. I was just there for a while watching.
Yeah, it's very good, isn't it? Also with the fact that the use again of white, which we've talked about endlessly, about how Jordi Belair, you've got to put it down to her, how she kind of leaves that white, and in that particular page, in the middle, it's kind of cut with no panels and just the figures in white, and it's kind of I think it's great. The sand into rain, I thought was. Not only Belair and Smallwood, but I think it's a great piece of writing from Lemire. True. When I read this again, I was like, oh, all right, there's the sandstorm. How do you kind of work that? Oh yeah, it can be just seen as rain. So yeah, a really clever little thing that Lemire's done. But you're totally right. I love the colours, the puddle there with the street lights. Just looks great. It's almost I don't want to say Vincent Van Gogh, but yeah, it is like it's you got the the blue and the yellows and the oranges, which is great. What is your next aspect, Connor?
My next aspect, for that being a little short one, is one we both have, which is Mark kicking the police officer, knowing him to be someone not quite a police officer. Turns out to be Sobek, one of Amut's lackeys, and he sadly takes Jean-Paul's life in a very violent attack by Mr. Knight on the Crocodile before we just see a very touching and silent close-off to Frenchie.
It was very unexpected, wasn't it? I didn't expect actually Frenchie to die. And actually I didn't. Like, he's one of the core members. I remember first reading this just thinking, oh, that can't be real, can it? So again, we're kind of questioning if it's actually real or not. But he, for the rest of the run, he's definitely dead. It was quite a shock. I found quite a surprise. And another interesting thing with the crocodile boy or the cop was that. So Mark's got his mask on, right? And remember, when Mark has his mask on, he can see the reality, like what is real. But in this one, interestingly enough, he does recognize it, but he pulls off the guy's face to reveal the crocodile.
Yeah.
So either Amut or Seth is being a lot more deceiving and cloaking themselves better, but it still doesn't fool Mark. I just find that a bit weird because, typically in the previous issues, when he had the mask on, he sees them exactly for what they are. So I just found that, I don't know.
I
whether
only
it's
noticed here
inconsistent.
the actual mask here on the mask where you first see is Sobek's crocodile head is that panel there is actually holding a human face mask as if that was covering a massive crocodile head. Oh wow!
Yeah. So he pulls a mask off, and we didn't see that before. So I'm not sure if that has any meaning or not, but it sure didn't fool Mark or Mr. Knight in that instance. Interesting and very sad with which is a very innocuous thing. Sobek just takes a little bite out of Frenchie's neck, which I guess is pretty bad.
Yeah.
And that spurs on Mr. Knight to fully just pummel him. But not shortly after that. Well, shortly after that, we see Frenchie depart, which is a bit sad. How about your third aspect, Connor?
My third aspect is interesting enough. I'll let you touch on the Gina point as we get to yours a bit later as well. But as it's sort of almost, it's like a sort of classic Greek Odyssey where as this issue progresses, Mark sort of loses everyone. Everyone sort of goes their different ways as if, the fifth issue is the final stop. This will be the final confrontation with just Mark. And as we find Mark losing everyone, we actually see Khonshu take a very different character role here. He becomes in a toilet setting very antagonistic. He's sort of been very giving Mark a lot of tough love in these issues where he's sort of been spurring on, like, come on, Mark, you can do it. But here, he's just straight up, like, bullying and almost like kicking a puppy to make it stand again.
And it's, I think it's furthered by the use of red in this page where you see the full shot, of Khonshu. Again, we get that the marker of red being, okay, there's something bad or something terrible. So Almut was dressed in red, Dr. Emmett had red hair, and when Mark was fleeing the hospital, he was in the stairwell, which was red. And again, so we see Khonshu just sitting on the toilet bowl, and as you say, rightly antagonistic towards him, trying to be, I think he's really trying to direct Mark in a certain way. Because I like your point about it being an odyssey. You're totally right. We first lose Crawley to Anubis on the raft at the other void. Then Frenchie dies, and then Gina, just amicably says, "Oh, look, I'm gonna hang back. You go on. It seems like my purpose for this journey was actually to give you a bit of rest and to give you some food to refuel." But yeah, Khonshu's only a very brief appearance in this issue, but yeah, it's enough to kind of get Mark going.
Yeah. Whoa, there goes my voice. All right, it's back. Um, so yeah, I guess my final point then is on the two big reveals, the very awake Marlene and the big reveal of the classic Moon Knight at the end. Very very sort of almost chalk drawn more than anything else. But I think just going straight back to Marlene, once again she proves she knows a lot more than anyone else seems to know about this place.
Yeah, and she mentions that the further away she gets from the hospital, the more clarity she seems to have. So she's affected by, this whole craziness as well. But she definitely knows stuff. I mean, one of my points was when she tells Mark, like she remembers everything. And she feels compelled to go to the pyramid. So she's actually directing Mark as well, which is always the case with Marlene. We've seen in even the old comics Connor as well, how she kind of is the one to either save Mark from danger or kind of keep him on the straight and narrow, and she's doing it here again.
Yeah, and actually I like here with the art actually as we flash back to Marlene telling Mark about remembering and knowing the path of Moon Knight, that it's very Shinkovich inspired, that sort of that flashback. I think it's just a very nice callback and very gorgeous.
Well, there's that one flashback as well, which calls back to that comic that we reviewed not that long ago, Marvel Preview number 21, I think, which shows Mark at the top of the page here flying down to save Marlene, and what was his name? Lardner. I think it was Amos Lardner or his brother, Tony Lardner, the guy that ended up having all those things out of his head and being almost kind of controlled with a remote control by that LeBlanc. So that's a direct callback, yeah, definitely. But yeah, rightly so. It's Shinkovich's kind of inspired art there by Smallwood, and again shows how talented this guy is. I mean, he can just shift his textures and his style just like that. I just wanted to note also as well, when we first see Marlene awake, it's a really beautiful shot of Marlene, very simple, but I love how Smallwood draws her face. There's a certain angle, and I can only imagine he probably used someone to model it, because there's a particular look, isn't it? Like she actually looks like a real person, person. So, really good indeed. Yeah,
and the very prominent blonde golden hair by Belair there, making it really stick out.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, really, really beautiful art from both colorist and penciler. So just touching on my aspects, I think we've kind of overlapped it on a couple of them, but the death of Frenchie, which I thought was quite shocking. In my notes, I put it as he dies quite innocuously. So, in that beginning, they're kind of fighting, and there's a bit of a scuffle, and it came out of left field that Frenchie somehow gets his neck in the way, and Sobek bites his neck. So I found that really shocking in that sense. And of course, when him dying, I remember first reading it going, oh gosh, he's a pretty big character to die.
Yeah.
So you're kind of left questioning what's real and what's not. The whole theme of Lemire's run, I think, is what is real and what isn't. So by having such an important character die, you don't want to believe it almost, but it happens. My second aspect was Gina's diner. Again, we touched upon this, but I found it really nice, actually, how Gina's kind of quite driven to go there. Like, of all the craziness, you've got some jackals flying above you, you've got a huge pyramid, a sandstorm, there's a guy that has a crocodile face, yet she's kind of like, let's go to my diner and let's just, I can fix you a nice meal, and there's something innocent and really nice about it, in that, like, she doesn't stretch beyond her means. She knows what she can do, and she knows what her role is to Mark. And when she finds a diner, she just wants to do the best she can and provide, the best pancakes and coffee for Mark. So I thought that was quite nice, nice touch actually. My my third aspect was the big one, which is Marlene awakening, and just how she retains all the memories that we initially thought from earlier on in the run was a figment of Mark's imagination. So it just gives a bit more validity that something is not totally right. Mark is right in a sense. So it's nice to have. It's comforting actually to have Marlene there going, yep. This is all real. I believe you. And having her kind of take the initiative as well and go, yep, let's go towards the pyramid. I feel I have more clarity the closer I get to the pyramid. So I thought Marlene was used very well here. I mean, because up to this point, she had no role really, except for one or two words. And finally, my last aspect was the classic Moon Knight, the last page reveal. In my notes, I put in, where to from here? Is that classic Moon Knight? Is that Khonshu? I was quite confused when I first read this last year, and it kind of wells up a lot of thoughts that you have. It's Mark kind of fighting himself figuratively, but now you see it physically.
Oh yeah.
Is it? So it kind of works on a couple of levels, and is it his other personality? Also, as well, what the hell is in that pyramid?
Yeah. And is he guarding it or trying to get in?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, are the answers all in there? And if he is guarding it, why doesn't he want to let Mark know, or Mr. Knight know what's in there? Because he's Moon Knight as well, isn't he? So it's all a bit of a mind boggle. But I found it a really good way to end that last issue, issue 4. Sorry. This is available on Marvel Unlimited. It's been released as single issues. It's in the trade of Volume 1 of Lemire's run. Am I missing anything out? Did Comixology as well.
Yep.
But out of this, what would you give the rating for this issue?
This is a tough. I think I'm going to give it probably a 4.5 or a 5. I'm not too sure, sort of rereading, I kind of love it a bit more than maybe even the first time I went through it, already loving it a lot. But yeah, no, it's just like another fantastic issue. And while I did say, it's this very sort of A to B issue, it's probably the finest example of an A to B issue you could ever have. And I think Lemire's character work always shines through with all these touching and surprising and shocking moments throughout. So yeah, definitely probably a strong 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's he definitely does round out the characters, doesn't he? And you get a sense of each and every one of them. Even Crawley was so well fleshed out before he was kind of left behind, but now we get Gina, who was really fleshed. I really loved the scene in the diner, and Marlene as well. She's starting to kind of develop in this. I would give it. What did I give last one? I think I gave last one 4 crescent darts. I'd give this one a 4 out of 5 as well. Again,
okay.
I think it's still totally up there. It is the only bad thing about Lemire's books, I think, is that sometimes you can burn through them quite quickly.
Yeah.
I think it's because you tend to enjoy them so much. I mean, that's how I feel. And this issue seemed to fly by for me. You can basically segment it into acts, right? So the first act was them standing outside meeting Sobek and Frenchie dies. Second act is in Gina's diner with a little bit of Khonshu in there, and then the third act is a third smallish act is them actually getting to the pyramid. So a very simple kind of structure, but it's more. I feel it's the characters that Lemire really fleshes out and really makes it interesting, as well as the whole kind of what the hell is happening theme. Yeah. Yep. So
I was just gonna add as a little note, here actually that I love at the end when Moon Knight makes an appearance. The page before his reveal, Mr. Knight gets a crescent dart thrown at him, and in a very sort of 80s throwback, the background is completely washed out to just a purple while he's hit in the face with a thock. That's a very sort of 80s thing where the background always cut out as fists were flying or someone was being hit.
That's a very good point, actually. I didn't notice that until you started mentioning it. And yeah, that's the only panel that has like a vibrant color,
Yeah.
right? So Geordie Belair does brilliantly, with her tones, and there's a green-grey tone outside New York. In the diner, it's predominantly kind of a blue-grey tone. In the bathroom, it's red. But, yeah, that purple has come out of totally nowhere. That is that's quite interesting. And yeah, the very comic or cartoonish Thok as he gets him. So, yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
Also, sorry, just looking as well, a little final note, just a panel above it as well. Again, I've got to shout out Smallwood's amount of detail that he puts. My God, that's a pyramid, and he's drawn every single bloody stone brick. It's pretty cool. So anyway, yep. So issue 4, another fantastic issue. Looking forward to the last chapter for the next run.
Yeah,
the next issues.
Issue 5 of 5 of the Welcome to New Egypt arc. Very exciting.
That will round out that first arc, which is still got a lot of questions, but entertaining nevertheless. Okay, let us head on. Connor, we have a second comic book to review.
Yeah, this is Iron Man, Volume 1, Issue 161, If the Moon Man Shall Fail. Released on the 10th of August 1982, written by Dennis O'Neil, penciled by Luke McDonnell, inks by Al Milgrom and Esposito Mitchell. Whoops. Colors by Bob Sharpen, lettered by Rick Parker, and covered by Ed Hannigan and Al Milgrom. For our little bare bones, a little pitch, we have Tony Stark, Stephen Grant, another rich millionaire, Miss Sissy Host 2. Yep, are invited to invest in an innovative new initiative, Project Neptune, an experimental underwater power generating facility. It's not long before AIM, Advanced Idea Mechanics, hijack Project Neptune for their own nefarious purposes, and the 3 investors are greeted by the evil organization as they arrive at the facility. Stephen Graham puts up a valiant fight but is overcome by AIM, and in the confusion, Tony Stark manages to slip away and don the Iron Man suit. As Iron Man prepares to confront AIM, they escape using the facility's escape pods before he has a chance to encounter them. Rigged to repel intruders, Iron Man battles the maintenance robots at the facility, but not before one of the robots rips open an airlock, flooding the room. As Iron Man is stuck trying to prevent the whole facility flooding, Stephen Grant discovers the name of one of the facility's designers, Daryl Flowers, holds the key to accessing the emergency circuits of Project Neptune, and to effectively save the day. Seemingly in an act of selfishness, Stephen Grant takes the last escape pod and disappears. Little do they know, Stephen Grant then changes to become Moon Knight, and as the White Avenger, he searches for Daryl Flowers to save those trapped in Project Neptune. After some street-level interrogation and conversation with some of his contacts, Moon Knight finds Daryl Flowers, and with Daryl on the radio to Project Neptune, Iron Man and the others are able to prevent the facility from flooding completely. Iron Man then quickly flies to the Prince Street where AIM have mentioned they were headed off to, and closes the adventure by neatly disabling AIM with some good old fisticuffs.
Yes, it definitely did wrap up rather quickly.
Yeah.
But, I guess the important bit was just the kind of indirect team up between the two.
Yeah, just sort of both there in a time of crisis.
2 billionaires and Mrs. Sissy Host the Second.
Richer than both of them combined.
Yeah, and just and snarkier than both of them as well. Yep.
All right, my friend. Did you want to lead us off with sort of your general feeling of the issue and your aspects?
Yeah, so I enjoyed this issue as well, considering it's not a Moon Knight book per se. He just guest stars in it. Look, and I've got no problems with Iron Man. I love Iron Man as well. But yeah, no, I thought this was great. For the time that it was written, what was it?
82?
82. Okay. It was kind of really well paced, I thought, and like you only have to go to the second page where it kind of gets straight into it with the sabotage or AIM taking Project Neptune hostage. So I thought it was really good. What did you think of it?
This is probably like my favorite Iron Man era, where it went from, I think around the issue 100, it goes Michelin, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, then it goes O'Neill's run, and then Michelin again. It's kind of this big long running of 100, 200 issues of classic Iron Man. It has like the Demon in a Bottle arc. It has the introduction of Rhodey, introduction of him becoming then War Machine and the Armor War. So yeah, it's a classic period, and reading it first back in the day on Marvel Unlimited, I think this was one of the first reads I actually ever got with Moon Knight before I did the Houston run. So yeah, I'm a big fan. Yeah.
All right, so you've read a lot of the issues before and after this as well.
Yeah. No, it's a really favorite Iron Man era.
It's definitely a lot of fun. I'm a lot more familiar with the 90s Iron Man. I did collect Iron Man for a while during the 90s. But yeah, this one I was unfamiliar with, but I really enjoyed it. Tony doesn't really, oh gosh, that's terrible. So sacrilegious. Tony doesn't come across too arrogant in it. If anything, Stephen Grant does, and Miss Sissy Host does as well, actually. So, it was a really fun read, I thought. My first aspect was basically this is kind of classic Iron Man in the sense that he's still got the secret identity, right? So you can probably talk to this a bit more, Connor. But so he has a secret identity, and he still has to, I guess, just physically carry a briefcase around with his costume in there. I don't know how his costume fits all in there, and he has to physically change. So I know I just like that old classic. I have to whisk myself away and get changed.
Yeah, very classic superhero compared to the movies of like the sudden start-up button press of his suit.
Well, even also, have you read, is it Extremis, or I think it's around that time?
Not in a while, actually.
No? Okay, but it's almost like he has like nanites or something in his skin. Or some Iron Man fans, please pull me up on this. But it's almost like what current day Peter Parker has in the Amazing Spider-Man. It's kind of this viscous substance that kind of he can just call it on a whim, and it covers him, and he turns into Iron Man. I think it's a very neat way of getting heroes to change into costume. I much prefer this. Basically, as clunky as it is, I much prefer Tony Stark going, "Oh bugger, I've got to go somewhere, and I've got to give me a few minutes to get changed." I much prefer that. Yeah. Well, how about we'll go to your aspect, Connor.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm getting 2 starts.
Yeah. We'll bounce. Let's bounce. Let's bounce between. Yeah. I like your aspects. That's why.
Well, after a little introduction with Stephen Grant, Miss Sissy Host II, and Tony Stark being a bunch of rich billionaires in the underground facility, and Stephen Grant sort of giving a good effort but failing to fight against AIM, I think, possibly intentionally, without his Moon Knight costume. Yeah. AIM quickly makes an escape in a whole 2 pages from the facility. As a kind of not their villains, and then Iron Man faces a gauntlet of robot enemies, which are all pretty funny with a lot of snark behind them in this little fight.
Yeah, a little bit of fun, isn't it? It's kind of the classic action scenes you want in a comic. Just generic enemies, generic robots, easily disposable, and just to see Iron Man dispose of them in different ways, I thought it was a lot of fun. Just kind of flicking through there now. They all are kind of different, aren't they? Like one of them grabs him and just tries to hold him. The other one's more magnet driven, and he's got to kind of point his repulsor ray to stop it, and the other 2 are kind of more humanoid. So yeah, just a bit of fun. I think it was great, and it actually fills up that, and when Moon Knight later goes onto the streets and beats up a few thugs, that kind of satiates our want for fight scenes in the comic book, I think. Yeah.
It's got like a very classic old 80s line of the "sure dude, the biggest jack in the box I've ever seen, probably the meanest too." Just stuff like that always gets me.
Yeah, you got to love the commentary, and if you look at it, like as well, geez, he talks a lot. I thought Spider-Man talked a lot when he fights. Iron Man's just like chattering away while he's Well, he's fighting these things, so he can multitask, which is pretty cool. um, my second aspect will bounce back is basically the three millionaires. I thought it was great, and how they were each used efficiently for the story. Now, the first two, Tony Stark and Stephen Grant, are obvious because they're our heroes, Iron Man and Moon Knight. But actually, I have to give it to Mrs. Sissy Host II. Although she was a crusty, decrepit, grouchy woman, the writer, was it O'Neill? He wrote her specifically, I think, to garner to kind of play off against Stephen Grant. So you know how there's only like one escape pod left, and she's old and she's kind of almost having a seizure or a heart attack. Then as a reader, you're going, okay, well obviously we should give it to her because she's the oldest and she needs the most help. So when Stephen Grant goes, no, give me the escape pod, and he jumps in and shoots off, you kind of think, wow, that's not the best form, So I think the Three Millionaires are really used well by O'Neill as a storytelling tool.
Yeah, that was my second aspect as well. Just sort of all the billionaires and Stephen Grant playing off them as a lovable dick. He's even from the start. He's talking about being here for the ride, not actually looking to buy anything. And like the escape pod to go to the service to get his costume is kind of classic here. But I also just love Iron Man mid-battle. Tony's totally just bantering up with Stephen Grant, kind of making comments about how obnoxious he is.
Yeah, he's and again it's so weird because we're used to these days Tony Stark being the real kind of dick. So it's cool to see Stephen Grant kind of do that instead. It's funny seeing. I forgot my point, Connor. Yes. Anyway, he's a lovable dick. So good old Stephen Grant. My third point would be later on in the issue. So as Stephen Grant steals the pod and he flies off, but we know he's got another reason. He's gonna, as Moon Knight, he can actually help out. So my third aspect was basically showing again the street connections that Moon Knight has, and I think this is very much part and parcel of the type of superhero Moon Knight is. I mean, it's you get the same with Daredevil's very similar as well. Is that he has to use his streetwise or streetwiseness? What's the street wisdom? He has to use his street wisdom to find out information. So he uses his resources. He's got Frenchie. He's got a little entourage. He's not as lone wolf as we like to think. He's got Frenchie. He questions a few thugs. He questions his contact Crawley on the street, and he relies on them to actually get the information on Daryl Flowers. And it's because of them that he actually tracks down Daryl Flowers and inevitably, saves the day. It's actually Mooney that saves the day here. Yeah. Iron Man kind of holds back a few tons of ocean water, but other than that, it's him.
Yeah, that leads on to my third and fourth aspects, where just we've sort of bounced around with different issues of not really Moon Knight's own run and different creators sort of basing off their own view of Moon Knight. And this is sort of the one where I feel they've gotten him most right out of all the classic issues we've read, where, there's just sort of that roguishness about him. And I love the fight scene where he sort of talks about, I'm rather good at making trouble myself, and that sort of playful banter is sort of what would almost later become already in the character being the sort of, I wear white so they see me coming sort of troublemaking fun. And I think he actually uses what I didn't even expect at all, Frenchie and Crawley, to really good effect.
Yeah. O'Neill really has, it seems like he's got a really good hold of Moon Knight, the character, which Unfortunately, in some other comics where Moon Knight is guest starring, he becomes very tropey. He becomes just he's either just one aspect, or he's some crazy dude, or he becomes, I dare say it, like a Batman-esque type of villain or hero. But I think O'Neill, really does write him well with this. And what I found interesting with this getting Moon Knight right is also. It's not that often that you get Moon Knight centered around Stephen Grant. I mean, he's always there, but it's always it's kind of like Mark Spector, or it's easy to go to Jake Lockley because he's the guy on the street. Rarely do you see Moon Knight based around Stephen Grant, and here we got him, the millionaire or billionaire, potentially investing in this facility. So it's kind of weaved around. That persona of Moon Knight, and I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I just love, it really gets the streetwise sort of look as well. And my fourth and final aspect is sort of just a small one to end on the fact that Crawley's the MVP here. Without Crawley, everyone would have died. It was only because Crawley had contacts on the street that he's able to find Daryl Flowers when Moon Knight had was dead end. So yeah, Crawley, go Crawley.
It just goes to show you can have three really rich people, but it comes down to the man on the street or the everyday fella that can kind of actually get things going. So definitely. My fourth aspect was I love this tale in the fact that it's a classic of, you see it time and time again, but of a small group, they're stuck somewhere. And there's a race against time. So for this tale, they're stuck in this underwater facility, just a group of millionaires and some crew, but also the water that Iron Man has to kind of keep at bay from flooding the whole facility. There's a time pressure for Moon Knight, for Stephen Grant, to actually try and find the answer, which, funnily enough, is just a bloke who knows what the emergency circuits are. I don't know what that means, but it's convenient that he's kind of like the key to the lock as well. Just as an aside, I'm just thinking it's really funny how the three millionaires, we look at it now in a more realistic way, and reading back on it, it's easy to kind of, pick apart some of the stuff, but I just found funny how three of them, these very important rich people go and look at this facility, but there's only the three of them, right? Being escorted by the staff. Like, where's the security? Where's the, where's all the entourage that would come with them? But that aside, this is a pretty good tale, actually, and I do like the fight scene. Moon Knight just taking on the thugs. It's very simple, but you see him quite acrobatic, and it's always good to see him kick ass.
Yeah, that's what I like about it. Well, it's very one and done. It's very three arcs set up within the the introduction, complication, climax. It's just set up really well, and has Moon Knight getting in the fray.
Yeah, exactly. And there's just the last bit, but I'll leave that to Connor. We got an email, which is great. We got an email from Daniel, so thank you, Daniel.
If you want.
Yeah, please. Loonies, Daniel's one of our dedicated loonies. Yes. Loonies out there, please send in your email or tweets or posts, comments on the Facebook page. But Daniel sent an email, and he kind of summed up the last bit I was thinking about. He goes, first, this was my first time reading an Iron Man comic. I thought it was pretty great. I loved how Stephen Grant just noped out of the underwater station with the Soul escape pod. That was actually hilarious. But the real hero of this issue is Crawley. Exactly like you, Connor. Without his intel, everyone in the station might have died. It was also funny how Iron Man just happened to know where the only abandoned building in the area was to find the bad guys. The one thing I did not find so great, the bad guys' aim. Overall plan was not well thought out. I would have liked to see Moon Knight join Iron Man at the end, beating them up. I would say the same, Daniel. There was a level of separation for them, wasn't there? So they both had almost separate adventures. in the book. No complaints, but yeah, it would have been good to see. I mean, on the cover, you see them both together, so you kind of led astray a little by the cover, hoping that that you see both of the costumed heroes together fighting, or fighting some evil enemy. But yeah, I agree. The bad guys' aim, their plan was very loose, Connor.
Yeah, there was such a non-villain that it kind of didn't matter. It could have been anyone. It could have just been like a person aboard the station wanting to sabotage it.
Yeah,
Like,
they were very much. Yeah, exactly. I think they were just totally used by O'Neill as just an instigator, a catalyst for what was to come. The main bad people were the maintenance robots and the thugs on the street, I thought. But it's always good to see AIM beaten, and Iron Man, isn't he super? He's just found the warehouse. And it was so great of AIM to announce to everyone that they were going to go to Prince Street, which I thought was pretty funny. So, yeah. So, thanks for that again, Daniel. Thanks for the email.
Yes, thank you so
Connor,
much.
Yeah, it was great. We do appreciate them, and please send them through, and we're more than happy to read them out and to discuss. Connor, Crescent Dart rating for this?
Yes, I think just on sort of its own merits, and obviously, it's when it comes to like a rating scale, it's kind of hard to compare what the 80s comic and a new release Lemire comic will sort of get. But I think this still has a lot of fun merits. My only real complaint is that sort of the non-villain of AIM, but I just love this comic, out of all the ones before, just getting Moon Knight so right and the playful banter at the start. I think it's a strong 4 out of 5 Crescent Darts.
I would. I'd have to agree with you on that one as well. I'd give it 4 Crescent Darts as well. I found it quite enjoyable. It actually has made me interested to actually read more of these Iron Man issues around this era. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to hit you up later on for suggestions for that. But yeah, I found it great. The story was well told. It's easy for this era around the 80s to overwrite or what we're used to now. So it's easy to have a lot of writing and dialogue in there, but this one doesn't, which I think is really good. The beats are pretty consistent, and it keeps on going. And look, things fall to the wayside, like AIM's true intentions or plans. But that's by the by. The fun bit is actually seeing Iron Man and Moon Knight, together, at least as millionaires. But yeah, I can't fault it. 4 out of 5 Crescent Darts for me. Yeah.
All right.
So, alrighty. Well, that pretty much wraps up our reviews. What we have now, I guess, what's happening next week?
Next week, yeah. Well, we're going to start our own little character spotlight on a very classic enemy with Morpheus. We'll be doing, of course, the Lemire's Moon Knight issue 5. Keeping up with our current run, but we'll be diving back into our first of the month run with Moon Knight Volume 1, Issue 12, the first appearance of Morpheus.
That should be great, I think. And that's the first part of, I think there's a couple of parts to the Morpheus arc, but yeah, that'll be great. It'll be good to wrap up the Welcome to New Egypt arc by Lemire. So looking forward to that next week as well. But also, yeah, we have discussed character spotlight. So I'm looking forward to diving right into really profiling Morpheus. I know there's a couple of loonies out there that really do like Morpheus as a villain. I find him quite interesting. So we're going to have to do our homework, Connor, here and come up with the goods.
Yeah, not get anything wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Well, before we wrap that up as well, I might just say, so basically, just a reminder as well, we are on WordPress, so www.intothenightpodcast.wordpress.com. Please have a look there, and if you haven't yet, just join the mailing list, and you'll be sure to get any blogs, any posts, emails straight to you. You can also find us on email at moonknightpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page now, which is facebook.com ITK, one sec, ITK Moon Knight. And also we have, where we've kind of started, we have the Facebook group, Into the Night, a Moon Knight fan base. And I actually changed the address to that, Connor. So it's facebook.com/groups/Into the Night. Awesome. So that's easy to remember. We're also on Twitter, ITK Moon Knight. Yep. On SoundCloud, as well as all your good podcast catches. I've also just added, and look, we won't be on this too frequently, but I've also added Instagram and Tumblr. So if you have a look for Into the Night podcast or something along those lines, you'll catch us on Instagram and Tumblr. The only reason why I've added, well, one of the main reasons I've added Instagram was I wanted to follow one of our loonies, Richard. He's got a really good Instagram account where he reviews comics. It's Sydney Comic Book Guy. So give that a look. And he reviews consistently like a massive amount of comics, which is really great. I dug up some of the Moon Knight reviews that he did, and I posted them up on our Facebook group, so you can catch it there as well. Have I missed anything out, Connor?
No, I think that's it. Once again, a big thank you to everyone who talks to us on the group, all the love stuff. Thank you, Daniel, for the email.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank
you all for listening. It's a good time.
Yeah, it's really great. Actually, just one other thing. You can't shut me up. As well, just to let you know, if you do join the mailing list, there's something that we've got called Over the Moon. So that usually comes out on Tuesday evening, Eastern Standard Time. And it basically gears you up or just reminds you for the 2 issues that we'll be reviewing in the upcoming podcast. So Over the Moon will come out in a few days' time, and it will just be a reminder that we're doing issue 5 from Lemire's run and the introduction to Morpheus. So please, if you can subscribe, that would be great. We've got just one other thing, Connor, which I think is quite special. I was actually quite chuffed at this.
I was saying we got a nice little song to end on.
Yeah, we actually, I want to thank so much none other than Max Bemis himself. I managed to tweet at him, and he kindly responded. So I asked if I could play one of his songs, because as we mentioned before, Max Bemis is a lead singer of a group called Say Anything, and you can find the links to his band as well as a couple of links to his song, which we're about to play. So I asked Max, and I actually asked him as well what song would be suitable for Moon Knight, and he has suggested Give a Damn, which is off their 2016 album. So I've put the links to the song on Spotify for you on our show notes, as well as the YouTube version, so you can actually watch the music video. But as for something a little different, Connor, and thanks once again to Say Anything and to Max Bemis, I think we'll go out to the song Give a Damn. So before we do that, catch you later. See you next time. And Connor,
may Khonshu look after the denizens of the night. Bye,
thanks
guys.
So much.
Thanks again.
See ya.
Teachers with my tendency to fall in some class. Kiss my ass in the hell, and what a wonderful thought. And the impulse of short structure is a blood clot. We need something that can open their ass and let it coat our lips. To blitz to hell with it. Just past yellow tendency. The sex right in by the hue. Subvert so thunderous and cloudy. So fast and clear blue. Gaudy sweat soaks down amongst the demons. Sorry, good sir, I've God, I wanna take it apart. Only beat with the break, for goodness sake. Guillotine from the twin of a tweedle knees. We will not, we will not, we will not, we won't, we will not, we will not, we will not, we won't. Something until they say. Something until they say. Something until they say. Damn what they say. Damn what they say. We don't get until they say. Flash, baby, now you fall in love. Crash, baby, down your fall.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.